Thank you all for being here. It's nice to see somebody in the crowd. Normally, we don't have anybody. So anyway, I hereby call the order the February 15th, 2024 public hearing of the City of Prescott Board of Adjustment. Board members present, please state your name when I call your name. I'm Jim Lamerson. I'm the chairman. Tony Teeters, vice chair.
Here.
Tom Davis.
Here.
Mary Fredrickson. Miriam Haubrick.
Here.
Mark Hoekness.
Here.
James Myers.
Here.
There appears to be 6 members present, and for us to take any actions, it will take a quorum of 4. So having said that, I'm going to turn the meeting at this particular point, after I lead us in the pledge, over to our city staff. So let's join the
Yes. Staff members present. Minutes.
We'll just introduce ourselves when we start talking, but
Okay.
just mention the minutes.
We're going to have to approve the minutes. Did the board members present read the minutes? Did you have any questions of the minutes or disagreements? What was contained in the minutes of the last meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor accepting the minutes as proposed, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously, 6 to nothing. And with that, now that we've done the minutes and accepted them, George, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm George Worley. I'm the planning manager for the city of Prescott. We normally don't have very many folks show up for a lot of the meetings, especially those associated with conditional uses. So I do want to talk for just a minute about what a conditional use permit is, what is before you, and what your actions are allowed and limited to. And then we'll have Kaylee.
George, can you speak louder?
And then we'll have Kaylee make the presentation. Sorry. I don't have a very loud voice, and I thought it sounded pretty loud. One of the things that we want to talk about for just a minute is what a conditional use is under the city's zoning code. A conditional use is one that is permitted by the zoning code, but may require additional conditions on the use to make it compatible. That can be something as simple as additional landscaping in order to buffer a project of a commercial nature from a residential, nearby residential property. The conditional use process is not a yes or no on the use. It's only looking at whether or not additional conditions are necessary to make it compatible. So this board, your job under a conditional use is to determine are additional conditions necessary to be placed on this use before it moves forward. It's not to approve or disapprove the use. It's permitted by our zoning. That's one of the things that's unusual about conditional use permits. Most of the time when we have something come before a body like this for a variance, for instance, when you deal with most of the things that come before you, they're variances. Variances are a yes or no determination by this body. Conditional uses are not. So just a reminder to you, and just to let the folks who are here, again, because this is a little different under Prescott zoning than in some other places. You cannot deny the use. You can add additional conditions as necessary to make it compatible. And with that, if you have questions about conditional use permits, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, we can step right into Kaylee's presentation.
Thank you, George. Board members, do you have some questions?
Mr. Chairman, Tom Davis, I have a question, George.
Certainly.
What distinguishes, let's say, basically a convenience store, which is a permitted use, versus a convenience store with a fuel service, and makes it a conditional use permit?
You're asking me to figure out why my predecessors wrote it that way. And as old as I am and as long as I've been here, that was actually written into the code before I got here. It has to do, I think, primarily with the potential volume of vehicle traffic. That you're going to get more because people will stop just for gas, or people will stop for the convenience store use, or they'll stop for both. Whereas if it was just a gas station, it's only people going for gas. And if it's a convenience store, it's only people going for the convenience store, the retail. And this combines the two, and you're going to get a larger volume of traffic. Often these operations are 24-hour operations, so additional concern about dimming lights in the parking lots and things like that, or dimming the sign lighting, was part of the conditional use process that was built into our zoning code. I don't know if that was a long answer to a short question, or
No, that was helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. Do I have any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, Mark Opens here. George, so from a pure code standpoint, the applicant Quick Trip, from a code standpoint, is authorized to build their station. The only thing that this board can do is apply conditions to the use of that approved location. Is that correct?
That's correct. What you're doing is applying conditions that make it more compatible with nearby residential property or with other commercial properties of a different type.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking up and down, are there any other questions that you would ask?
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to step away and turn it over to Kaylee.
Okay, let's go over to the.
Hi.
Kaylee.
Thank you, George. Good morning, board members and chairman. My name is Kaylee Nunez, community planner with the city of Prescott. So today our one and only item is the CUP for the Quick Trip convenience store and fueling station. So here is an aerial map showing the location of the subject parcel, which is just west of Lowe's and 2 parcels east of U-Haul, across from Frontier Village Shopping Center, of course. Here is a zoning map. So the dark red is business regional zoning, and the pink is business general. So business regional and business general are flexible zonings in that they can allow commercial and residential uses. Obviously, this is a commercial use proposed, a little bit heavier in nature than, say, an office or just a convenience store by itself. So this I did just to kind of give an idea of how much of the parcel this the store and fuel pumps will occupy. So it's roughly a 5-acre parcel, and most of the development will be set to the southwest quadrant. I wish I had a laser pointer. Here is a site plan provided by the applicant. So it's showing the right in only off Highway 69 and then exiting to the east via the Lowe's entrance. Here's a landscaping plan provided. So I did a summary there. Just kind of breaking down the characteristics of the project. Again, the store is approximately 5,300 square feet. The canopy will be about 7,300, designed to match building. So exterior finish will be pretty neutral tan, stucco with stone accents, and the traditional Quick Trip signage. They are showing enhanced landscaping and a wall to the north to provide buffering against the residential development to the north, as well as reduction of heat island effects. And it will be open 24/7 with approximately 2 to 6 employees on site at any given time. So precursory review revealed the site plan meets required building setbacks, meets required parking spaces. Again, ingress is via right only off Highway 69, egress to be taken via Lowe's entrance. And as George explained, the CUP is required for these service stations in the BG and BR districts. The only zoning districts a fueling station is allowed by right is in industrial districts. So they would not have to do this process. So I didn't want to do a whole wall of text here, but this is all broken down in the staff report, of course. So I reviewed it against, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pertinent criteria from the Land Development Code. Those being effect on environment, compatibility with surrounding area, infrastructure impacts minimized, external impacts minimized, consistency with general plan and code, parcel size, the site plan, and additional conditions. So the summary, the synopsis is that it met all these criteria. Again, you can impose extra conditions if you feel it's necessary. So the recommended action is move to approve as presented or approve with conditions. And I am open for any questions. And then once we're done with questions, we do have the applicant here, Daniel Chambers with Quick Trip, to answer as well.
Thank you very much. Again, I go up and down the board, starting on my left. Miriam, you have any questions?
Not at this point.
Okay, let's keep moving.
Tom Davis. Kaylee, could you give us approximate distance between the north side of this site plan and the property line? There's a space there that showed in your previous graphic.
I don't have that dimension on there. I should. I did measure from like the northernmost lights in the parking lot to the northern property line, and it was beyond 100 feet. So I don't know if Daniel has answer to that. We had the scaled site plan in the packet, so. I know it's beyond 100 feet because I was checking that. Because there's requirements to reduce the height of light poles if you're within 100 feet of a residential property boundary.
Thank you.
Daniel, are you doing research there?
I know that.
You have to go up to the podium.
Hello, Chairman and Board. My name is Daniel Chambers, and I office out of 1116 East Broadway Road in Tempe, Arizona. I know that is one of the things that came up when we initially met with the HOA is what that distance was, and our goal was to move the site as far away from the residents as we could. I don't recall off the top of my head what that distance was, but it was 300. Okay. Yeah, I recall somewhere around 300 feet was the separation that we were able to get. And we're trying to keep that as great as distance as possible.
Yeah, and the point is it exceeds the setback requirements by a couple hundred feet. So, I absolutely can go look at the scaled site plan and provide that exact measurement, whether it's 175 or 250. The point is it's like well beyond the required setback. If that makes sense.
So, excuse me, a follow-up question as with the applicant here is, what kind of obligation or restrictions on that remainder property is there to prevent in the future the facility from expanding north?
No, it's a good question. Right now, there is no restriction or no condition on that. It is from a practical matter, it would be very challenging based on the grading and the terrain and just the difficulty of the sheer cost of constructing something there. We don't have any intent to expand or do anything there at this time, and I don't think we would just because of how difficult it would be to develop.
If I may, sorry, you can approve this per the site plan presented, so it's tied to the site plan, and then if they wanted to change it, they'd have to come back through a public hearing process.
And that would be something we'd be very comfortable with. So, as Kaylee mentioned, we did impose some of our own restrictions on the site with the enhanced landscape. When we did meet with the HOA board, they brought up several concerns and several ideas to help try to mitigate some of this. And we did retain all of those items on the site plan that you guys see in front of you to try to be as respectful to the neighbors as we could.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, Mark Hoeknes here. I make this question for staff. The Lowe's that's adjacent to the property and fairly close to the residential area, what, if any, restrictions on lighting apply to the Lowe's?
You know, I don't have the answer to that question. It was built over 20 years ago, so if they have any restrictions applied, you know, that been prior to my knowledge. George may have.
They were just under the city standard requirements, so no light spillage off of the site. There was nothing.
So they just have to comply to section 6.11 outdoor lighting, and that they, you know, can't have light trespass off the site. So there's a whole section on outdoor lighting in the land development code that when this comes to building permit is going to be cross-checked against, they do need to submit a photometric plan with all that information.
Excellent. You answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Are there any other questions from the board? Okay, before I open this up for public comment, let me make a couple comments. Number one, the folks that are here in the audience that would like to speak to the board, let's try and keep our comments to no more than 3 minutes. And I would like to start with the HOA representative and give her the opportunity to speak first.
Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Karen Monks, and I'm the president of the Prescott Canyon Estates Homeowners Association. We are a small community with it's a quiet senior community just north of the Prescott site, the Quick Trip site, with 255 manufactured homes, 400 residents, and we have 35 acres with creeks, wildlife, and dense foliage. The proposed building is less than 300 feet away from our homes, and the entrance, the new driveway that ADOT has approved, is only 130 feet west of our main entrance on Highway 69. We submitted a letter, an objection to this previously. It was about a week ago, and we had 165 letters from our residents objecting to this building a gas station on this site. While we understand that this application purportedly meets Prescott's requirements, it does not, in fact, provide needed detail and context and does not fulfill the requirements of the Land Development Code. For example, LDC 935 says that there should be a proposed use which would support rather than interfere with the uses permitted outright in the zone in which it is located. If the use is permitted outright in another zone, there must be substantial reason for locating the use in an area where it is only conditionally allowed. The application simply does not provide a substantial reason to justify why this gas station needs to be built at this site. Given the number of gas stations in the immediate and extended area, the need for a gas station can't possibly be the reason. Per LDC 35C, the proposed use shall not have negative impacts on existing use in the area through the creation of noise, glare, fumes, dust, smoke, vibration, fire hazard, and other injurious or noxious impact. The applicant shall provide adequate mitigation response to these impacts. The application states that additional noise impacts are expected to be negligible. We find that to be a bit ludicrous, quite truthfully. Even though we are located next to a busy highway, because of all the trees and the contours of the property, we don't get much noise. very few of us hear anything from the highway. And to assume that because you're going to put 500 cars getting gasoline and going in that store during a 24-hour period, and that was just during the peak hours, it's ridiculous to think that there are not going to be noise impacts on people. We have people who are already getting noise impacts from the Lowe's facility. The water flows through the site, and we're going to have
30 seconds.
pollution that is going to go down into the washes that ends up in our community and also it also will be in the I'm sorry. I am having difficulty meeting this time requirement. It also will end up feeding the county water. So as a result of this, we would ask that you put as many requirements as possible. I understand you cannot veto this today, but that you can put additional requirements on it. But because of the traffic impacts, the environmental impacts, the wildlife impacts on this, and the fact that you basically are going to be making our lives miserable, we ask you to do as much as you possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Matthew.
Roger Matthews.
Just before you speak, Roger, hold on a minute. I've got a question for the attorney. Just to clarify, by right, the applicant has a right to ask.
The applicant has a right to ask.
Okay. By management, the city doesn't have the responsibility to say yes. We have the responsibility to put the conditions for use on the property as applicable for continuity within the community.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. You, as the Board of Adjustment, sit as a quasi-judicial body. You're going to make a decision after hearing all of the facts and applying the law, and yours is going to be the final decision in the city jurisdiction. This does not go to the city council, even on an appeal. If there was somebody who wanted to file an action, it would go directly to the Superior Court. The Superior Court would then consider it as a record review. That is, they won't take additional testimony or comment. They're just looking at the record. And their standard of proof is going to be whether or not the board acted arbitrarily or capriciously or otherwise abused its discretion. So they're going to give you a large latitude of your discretionary function. And unless you abuse that discretion or are so arbitrary and capricious, they'll uphold whatever determination you make. But yes, I think generally speaking, your job is to look to see if the application makes sense, and or do you want to put additional conditions on it after hearing the testimony of the folks in the public and the applicants.
Thank you very much.
All set?
All set.
Okay.
Thank you for your courtesy, by the way.
You're welcome. I'm learning too. I'm Roger Matthews. I live at 775 Prescott Canyon Drive. My wife and I are the first home as you come into the development. Our house is on the setback line, and we are 40 feet from Sardi's property, from the back of his property. So we are the closest house. I just want to give you just a minute summary of some concerns that we have. In 1986, our development was built with permits, and Holiday Drive was our access. And Holiday Drive is still there today. It's a traffic light, except it's only a parking lot today. Because when the developer came in to tear down the mountainside, they pushed the fill over the springs and over the creek, covered up, and they continued to build the parking lot and pile it until about half of the canyon, Prescott Canyon, was covered. Today, it's stacked rocks to hold back the landfill. But the landfill came down and took out a house at the bottom of the hill. It took out Holiday Drive, and today Holiday Drive is no more. That was our only access egress from our development. But immediately we were given the commercial access of what has now become Prescott Canyon Drive. That was not our entrance. What we now have Prescott Canyon Drive, that's where the manufactured homes were built in. That was not open for traffic. That was open to traffic after the accident. And our concern is somebody wasn't paying attention, somebody wasn't following the rules, somebody wasn't inspecting, and we suffered the consequences. There was a lawsuit involved, and there was monies paid. Now, we're concerned about. I'm going to just read. We were given emergency approval to have direct access from Prescott Canyon Drive because our only access was missing, is gone, was covered. And today, Prescott Canyon Drive is our only access. Since then, we've been restricted to no left turn onto Route 69 due to the traffic load. Today, when trying to exit PC,
30 seconds.
we wait for oncoming westbound traffic that goes against 50 miles an hour. We know its speed limit's 45. We know they don't go that, they all go faster. When we try to exit to turn right only and merge into traffic, we have to wait until there's a light at Lowe's that stops the traffic. Once the traffic stops, Lowe's exit their traffic, which continues in our direction and then continues to block us in. In other words, the traffic load is very heavy.
That's
it's
time.
very difficult. We have people over 90 years old in our development.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm sorry?
Thank you for your comments, but your 3 minutes are up.
Mr. Chair, Mark Oakness.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question for you. The Holiday Drive is where the light is going into Lowe's?
Correct.
So if the development had access to Holiday Drive, that would give you folks a safe corridor to exit?
My people are saying no, but I'm thinking that it would give us a chance to get on the highway at a traffic light and turn left to go to Prescott Valley.
So I don't know, I assume your road, Prescott Canyon is a private road.
Yes.
And not a city road. So I appreciate and share your concern about the traffic there. If somehow access to your development was created to go in and out of Holiday Drive, that would solve a significant problem.
I would refer to that to Karen. Okay, she's saying yes. My opinion would be yes. And
So let me, for those that, I don't know if this is feasible, but if either Holiday Drive had a east-west swing that connected over to the Lowe's, and again, I don't know where property lines are, and I'll ask the gentleman from Quick Trip, if on your vacant back half of the lot, if a road were put in to cross the 2.5 acres, I assume your property line abuts Holiday Drive? So, thank you.
That is correct. With this particular land, it comes with access to Holiday Drive. We did in the initial meeting with the HOA, that is one of the things that we did discuss, was building a connection from the residence over to Holiday Drive. That was one of the things that we did talk about with the HOA. But that meeting ended up, I believe that you guys took it to the general and they voted it down. So, but that is something that we did initially talk with on the HOA, was giving them access.
Excellent. Thank you. Just one moment. Let me use my walking stick here to describe what I'm looking at. So this is your Prescott Canyon. This is Holiday.
Yes. Correct.
We did not talk about that. We talked about access through our site and creating a drive aisle in the back of the drive, in the back of the site.
Similar. So these residents could come down, drive across the back of your property, adjoin this road, and have east-west access.
It was similar to what you're showing. It was Karen is correct. It was behind the building. We talked about going through the site behind the building and making that drive aisle larger than what is currently shown to give access back and forth to the residents. When that did not go through, we shrunk the drive aisle to move the site closer to Highway 69. We did not talk about a separate drive.
Okay, so a separate drive would be one option. Another option would be to connect. So if the board were to add a condition to connect Prescott Canyon to, and again, I don't know if
This is a Holiday right there.
is that Holiday or
Yeah, that's Holiday Drive.
is that a city street or?
Yes.
So that's a
mean-
city street, so the city would allow you to connect to it.
One of the challenges with that, though, is that the Prescott Canyon Drive is a private drive, and the HOA would need to approve that as well. So it gets a little tricky putting a condition on that because it would have to have HOA approval because ultimately they control that. And that's one of the reasons that we did meet with them initially. And they, what I understood is said no, that they weren't interested in that and they didn't want a Quick Trip to have any access to the private drive as well. But if you make a connection, there is potential you do make that cross connection.
Right. I understand. Well, we could make a conditional use to provide vehicle access from Prescott, the left side up there, the Canyon Drive, over to Holiday Drive, if approved by the HOA. I mean, if they say no, then that condition wouldn't apply.
Yeah, and Quick Trip is something that we were open to that if that was something they wanted to revisit. But what I understood is it was very overwhelmingly no from the residents.
Yeah, I'm fine.
But you can go up to the podium.
So
to
to
explain.
keep the meeting moving here.
I don't want, maybe Ms. Karen can clarify. I don't want to misrepresent it at all.
Absolutely. Mr. Chair, I yield.
Yeah, thank you. We need a little bit of decorum here.
Thank you. We voted down sharing our driveway with them. They wanted to use our driveway for the access onto Highway 69. And the access that they were offering to Holiday Drive went through the gas station. When you have people who are 70, 80, 90 years old trying to transit that, it was impossible, which is the reason that we voted that down. If you're suggesting an additional road behind the site, not going through the site, we would be open to considering that seriously.
Thank you for your comments.
Pat Matthews.
Good morning. My name is Pat Matthews, and I live at 775 Prescott Canyon Drive with my husband. And as he stated, ours is the first house behind where they proposed this gas station. I'm 80 years old. My husband is 85. This was meant to be our forever home. I fear for our safety, our property values, possible damage to our home while they're blasting that granite or whatever they have to do out there to put this gas station in. Please don't grant this. I hope that you see it's wrong to put this gas station in front of a development of senior citizens. Our health and safety are threatened. We'll have fumes, bright lights, increased traffic, more difficulty getting in and out of the development. It will be disturbing our peace and tranquility and serenity that we now enjoy. I'll no longer be able to sit in my backyard and watch the wildlife and birds because they won't be there anymore. I ask the members of this board, first, with the increased fire hazard, will we lose our Firewise status? We are now a Firewise community, and we're going to have a gas station right in front of our development, and we're in a semi-forest environment. I ask the members of this board, the Sardi representative, the Quick Trip representative, would you like this gas station next to your home? That's what I would like you to give me an answer to, because I don't want it next to mine. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Acacia Koa.
Okay. Acacia Koa. I live at 2499 Hilltop Road. I've been there for 21 years. I was there before Lowe's was built. I protested Lowe's because I said it was going to impact everything, and it did. And this is going to do the same thing. So I just have to have you say no, please. Lights, fire hazard, the displacement of animals, impact to our creek, and just getting onto the highway. I mean, it used to be I could get right on in 5 minutes. Now it takes almost 20 minutes. I have to wait for 200 cars to go by before I can turn into my park. We've been trying to get access to the highway, the Holiday Drive, and it hasn't happened in 21 years. So I ended up suing Lowe's because they wouldn't let me exit from my house out to the highway. They disrupted the road. It's been a debacle. This will be another debacle. Please say no. Thank you.
Thank
Jerry
you for your comments. Next.
Jerry Carly.
Thank you for listening to us today. I'm at 2478 Hilltop Road, which is right across from Lowe's. I'm down a little bit lower, but I still, in the summertime, the noise coming from the church across the highway is very distracting. The noise from the parking lot at Lowe's, where the young people do their skating in the evenings, screaming and yelling and partying. Nobody controls that. So all that noise is coming into our purview. And anybody that thinks it's going to be less noise from all those cars coming in is not being realistic. Also, the noise from the cleaning units at Lowe's at nighttime, it grinds and grinds and grinds well into the night. There'll be refueling at the service station, so then we'll have to listen to that. The lighting is not adequate, and Lowe's has not done what they were supposed to do, and nobody seems to be able to get them to do the proper lighting. Who's going to enforce all of this? I can't see any of these conditions changing after this is built. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Linda Brady.
She passes.
Can I take her place? I don't need 3 minutes.
It's up to the chair.
State your name, your address.
I'm Dennis Anton. I'm at 2254 Hillside Loop Road, and no one has offered an alternative between Lowe's and Prescott Lakes Parkway. There is empty land that would be cheaper for you to build there than where you're proposing. Also, to put gas tanks in, you have to go down about 40 feet of granite. So how are you going to do that? Dynamite? Please. That is not the right thing to do. And I'm begging you to please reconsider an alternative location, which long-term would save you money and give us peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Michael Orbler.
sorry for my bad writing. I'll use my time.
Craig Skiera.
Hi, good morning. My name is Craig Scara. I live at 2312 Hillside Loop Road within the Prescott Canyon Estates. And just wanted to make a couple quick points to the board based on what we've heard here today. And to get on record, I would like to request that an expansion restriction be included as part of the conditional use, kind of regardless of everything else and the rest of the conditions. I'd formally like to request that go on record as being a request. And then also in regard to the environmental study, not being familiar exactly with what conditional uses you can add to a property, just to be aware of what everybody had said about the creeks and the wildlife. From 30 years of environmental experience, I know the runoff damage that can occur from a gas station like this, oil leaks, gas overspills, tank overfilling, tank leaks, it goes on and on and on. So all I'm asking is within your power on the conditional uses to put in every possible protective conditional use in regard to petroleum impacts runoff from stormwater from this property. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have more speakers there?
No, that's it.
That's it. Any questions from the board? I would have some concerns over into the creeks. To be very candid with you, I think that we could suggest to the applicant that mitigation to ensure that the runoff potential into the creeks would be mitigated. Is that something that you can address, Mr. Applicant?
And I have something to say about that after Daniel.
Yeah, so we can start with the stormwater runoff that was mentioned. So what we have to do during construction to any time you build anything over an acre, you have to get a permit from the state of Arizona, a notice of intent, and that is something that we go through. I think it's required for most building permits as well. And what that does is that outlines all your construction procedures and how you have to protect and make sure that there is no runoff during construction. And then also as part of our civil engineering plans that get submitted to the city, we have to do a stormwater management plan. And that plan has to account for everything that happens during construction and then what happens post-construction to make sure that everything that we disturb is completely remediated and it's restored back. So that would include like the landscaping that we would add, any of the curb and any of the filters in the storm system that we install as part of this project. And what we do is we have a mechanical BMP, which stands for a best management practice device, and that is in place if there ever is a spill that would be able to capture that and not discharge any of that free product into the storm system to keep it out of the creeks and out of the city municipal storm sewer system. And then we have a group at corporate, and their job is to do the regular maintenance. We have quarterly inspections of all those BMP devices, something that we do to all of our facilities across the country to ensure that they don't get clogged, because it's very easy to get clogged with leaves and debris. And then if they're clogged, they're not going to be effective in work. So we have quarterly inspections, and we have a maintenance staff that are Quick Trip employees that also help maintain that to make sure that we don't have that. To talk about some of the fuel concerns that were brought up, something that Quick Trip does is everything that we do is going to be in a double wall tank. It's pretty cool. It's 2 fiberglass walls, and it's got like a brine inside of it, something similar to like if you brined a turkey and that salt water. And so if there ever is a leak, it'll set off a lot of sensors that can get fixed before it ever gets to the second layer of the tank. So if you look at our track record with the EPA, we have a very good track record. We work with the EPA to ensure we don't have any leaking facilities. That is something that we work very hard to protect, because it it is not a reputation that we want to have and that we don't have and we're not going to have. All the fuel pipes that we do are also double wall fiberglass. They're specifically manufactured for us to be certain lengths. So every time there's a transition, that's a bigger potential for a leak anytime you have two joints coming together. So all the joints are set in very strategic places, and they're also set in double fiberglass wall sumps. So if there ever is a leak in the joint, it'll get filled up in the sump that are filled with sensors to let the technicians know that there is a leak. So that's something that we take very, very seriously and work very diligently to ensure that we don't have any runoff or negative impacts to the surrounding environment.
Thank you for your comments there. Kaylee, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, that beyond this, there will be full engineering and building permit reviews that address traffic, environmental, the building safety concerns, planning concerns. We actually have a dedicated staff member at the city. His position is environmental coordinator, so he's there to ensure that they comply with all those standards through the state.
Thank you for that. Are there other comments here from the board?
Mr. Chairman, James Myers. I thought I heard that in the past there was access to Holiday. Is there a legal easement there, and could we find out where that exactly was at the time?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I had a sidebar here.
I think at one time there was access to Holiday Drive from Prescott Canyon Estates. And if so, is that a recorded easement, and where that easement might be?
I do not know the answer to that because we weren't looking at any sort of re-access through Holiday Drive for Prescott Canyon Estates, but I can absolutely do a record search through the county. I thought I saw someone with their hands up who may have information who has lived there for a while.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I can also answer part of that. The very first 150 plus or minus feet of Holiday Drive behind the traffic signal portion of it is a public right-of-way. So it's dedicated as a street right-of-way. Beyond that, it becomes Lowe's property and turns into a parking lot. So you'll notice the location where the Quick Trip proposes to connect to it is actually at the very end of the dedicated public right-of-way. So it doesn't go all the way through into the parking lot. Does that answer your question? A little bit above that, but yes, right about there. Is that what you're? Okay.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So, when it becomes time to make a motion, I believe if we had something like, if requested by the HOA, the applicant will provide access from Prescott Canyon Drive to the public right-of-way on Holiday Drive. We could say, I would just want to ask staff if that's a correct verbiage for a motion.
That would be the correct way to word that. And also, I want to announce that the property owner, Mike Sardi, is here. Usually, like, the conditions we impose are operating hours, lighting, tying it to the site plan, requiring them to build a second road. I just want to double check whether that's something that's reasonable. Just never come across it. So.
And who would
I'll check on that with you, but if we could let Mike Sardi speak in the meantime, and we'll get an answer for you.
Yeah, come up front, Mike.
Is that okay? All right. Morning, everyone. Oh, boo. Oh,
That's rude.
Wow.
Don't be rude.
I just got booed. My name is Mike Sardi. I represent the landowner and a good neighbor to Prescott Canyon Estates. We are, we've been, that's incredible. Yeah, you know, we've had this site and now with Quick Trip, I want to be, first of all, encouraging that there's no probably better fueling station that we could partner with, right? For our community, I don't know who's familiar with Quick Trip, one of the, finest facilities down in the valley. They're certainly some of the most clean fueling stations, higher end, food, beverage offerings. They keep it, clean and classy. So I think that's a vote in favor of Quick Trip. Another vote that I just want to make sure, because obviously there's so much history, and with the good people of Prescott Canyon Estates, I've been in touch with them with a similar layout. I had thought that a fueling station on the north side of Highway 69 would be very valuable, given that between Prescott Valley and Prescott, there's no fueling station, and it's one of the, we've got, of course, traffic coming that way in the morning. You can stop for your coffee. And so these, something like this would be very valuable. I met with the prior board with this same site plan and an access road to Holiday Drive, with the idea that we would trade value for value, access onto Prescott Canyon Estates as an easement for their safe access to a lighted intersection at Holiday Drive, which, especially given the fact that ADOT is about to widen Highway 69 with a raised median. So these folks are going to have to, they're going to have to do a U-turn every time they want to go home from Prescott, because there will be no left access in. That raised median that ADOT this year will go out to bid to widen Highway 69 finally from Pioneer Parkway, Prescott Lakes Parkway down to Target, Pavway. Those, they're going to now have to do a U-turn to get to Prescott Valley if they're leaving in the morning, or they're going to have to do a U-turn to get back to their homes. The safe access to the lighted intersection at Lowe's is a great idea. And Quick Trip, has been very diligent in trying to access that or provide that. But they created a situation, like Ms. Monks was saying, I didn't see that site plan, but if they wanted the road so far toward Highway 69 that maybe that's why it went through the fueling station. Because again, they're asking for as much as they can get. They want this huge setback. I get it, but if Prescott Canyon Estates wants to move that road that far south, well, then the site plan has to adjust to allow for all the use, right? Now, if the road could go, there's a contour that would work, that would provide, safe access for them to Holiday Drive. But I don't want to tell Quick Trip to do that if it's just free. It's like, okay, well, here's your safe access, but we're not going to give you an easement off of Prescott Canyon Drive. Now, based on the traffic counts, I haven't seen the traffic study, but if the, traffic counts are such that they're less impacted by a safe easement from Prescott Canyon Drive to allow fueling customers instead of adding this right in, right out, maybe that's a fair trade for them to make in order to have safe access to Holiday Drive. So, when I heard that they had voted that down, I felt bad because ADOT is going to widen this road. It's going to be a very different situation for them. I know I've taken more than 3 minutes, but that's my consideration. And,
Thank you for your comments, Mike. You have been a little longer than you should have been, but let's have somebody from the homeowners now discuss what you just discussed,
Okay.
and let's clarification on where we can. I think there's room here for people to be happy. I'm not quite sure what that room's going to look like.
All right.
Started in 100 years.
Please.
Let's show some decorum here.
So what he's suggesting is a trade-off, and we think we're just by the intrusion into our life that trying to go along with this by suggesting there's another way for us to get over to Holiday Drive to make it safe, which is important to us. It cannot go through, our access cannot go through the back of that gas station because that is not a safe access. And saying that they need to be able to use Prescott Canyon Drive to do that, ADOT's already approved this extra driveway here. They don't need to use our driveway. The site plan as it is will function quite well, but we do need access, but it's not a matter of a trade-off. We're already having had a trade-off for this. We are willing seriously to consider a separate road behind the site that you're proposing in order to give us access and the safety of our, and I really appreciate your suggestions, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, so Mark, circling back to your question about, Quick Trip agreeing to provide that, drive behind the gas station, I'm going to call up Daniel because really ultimately that's going to be, up to Quick Trip whether they're amenable to that stipulation. So go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, can I make just a comment here about that? We're here to add or modify conditions of the use. And if our conditions apply to the applicant that he objects to, that's unfortunate, but at the same time, may be reasonable.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, so when we originally met with the HOA, what we had proposed, the site plan looks a little different than this. This has evolved over time and based on some of the feedback we received, is we do have, if you see on plan right there, there is the access to Holiday Drive, and it was pretty much a straight shot over to Prescott Canyon Drive, and we offered to rebuild from that point in Prescott Canyon Drive all the way down to the ADOT connection and rebuild that to make it the pavement section a little bit more robust than what it is. That drive is very narrow now and it's not in the best of condition. We wanted to rebuild that as part of it and provide access that would allow the residents to go and drive behind the site where it is not very busy. We did not have the parking back there intentionally for that reason, and drive behind the site to gain access to Holiday on an ingress or an egress side. And then yes, some of our customers would be able to make a left onto Prescott Canyon and get out onto Highway 69. I'm not saying that you guys wanted that. I'm just saying that's what we talked about. And then at that time, we were not pursuing an individual drive on Highway 69. But based on the feedback that we got from the HOA that they weren't interested in having a connection to Prescott Canyon Drive, then that's when we changed our site plan around. We moved and we got rid of parks away from Prescott Canyon Drive. We tried to stay away from it. We tried to keep the site as close to Highway 69 as we could, and that's when we started working with ADOT on the drive. And this is now the probably the third or fourth iteration of the site plan is what you guys see in front of you based on the feedback that we got.
Thank you for your comments. I have one question. I mean,
sir,
I'm not familiar with quick stops that much. I'm imperative that every quick stop has to have a.
Yes, that's part of our business model, and that's how we provide for our employees is part of through that.
Is the property that you're asking use permit?
Hey, Jim, you're cutting out, so make sure you're just pushing on it the whole time.
Okay, I'm trying to do that. So anyway, is there another use of that property that you can do that would be in the best interest of your company, et cetera, besides a quick stop at that location? That's my question.
Currently, we just build Quick Trip Fueling convenience stores. That's our only business right now. So.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a question for staff. Being a conditional use permit, is it even appropriate for a motion to connect Prescott Canyon Drive with Holiday Drive and the details of how that would be worked out between Quick Trip and the HOA? I mean, I could actually, in my mind, see closing Prescott Canyon Drive access to Highway 69 and making the access only from the Holiday Drive to keep people from driving in the wrong location. But is that from a policies and procedures, can we have a condition like that?
So that is a substantial condition. And I will tell you, I've only been through a few of these. All of us have to start somewhere. So that's why we have our planning manager here. And it can be requested. It's a big ask. Again, the Quick Trip would have to agree to it verbally, and then it would have to be stipulated in the motion. But you could do it.
I thank you for that. And then I'll just ask the gentleman representing Quick Trip, if a motion were made to connect Prescott Canyon Drive with Holiday Drive on the north end of your property, and then in coordination with the HOA, would that be something that Quick Trip would do to be a good neighbor?
I would have a couple of questions about that. Are you talking about a separate connection point, separate from the facility? Or are you talking about through the facility?
No, not through the facility. I understand driving through the parking lot. I wouldn't be concerned with that. But if this is imaginary, if this road went like that, and the location I'm not worried about, but if there were a separate road that went across here to connect with Holiday Drive, and then if the world were perfect, if it was me, I'd say we'll close this road altogether. And then so that their access was always from the light. Because when this becomes 3-lane, it's going to be even busier. But that I'll leave that part out. That I don't care about. But the road would go like that. Is that something, being a good neighbor, that Quick Trip would fund to do?
There would be a substantial funds to do that because the further you go back, the grades get a lot more challenging and you get a lot closer to the residents, something that we were trying to avoid. I think it'd be something that we could look at and consider. There is a lot of factors that go into it, considering where our drive is. We're getting right up to the edge of what is the public right-of-way. And then you have to have the separation from our drive, and then it gets onto private property on Lowe's. So there's a lot of logistical things that would have to be considered. And you'd also, I think, have to have a partnership with Lowe's on that too, because it's their private property and there would be a small portion that would be traversed on their property as well. So it's a good concept, but I don't know if we can fully define that here in this meeting because there's a lot of moving pieces and legalities with that. Because would that road be a private road? Who would maintain it?
Yeah,
There's a lot of questions that would need to be answered.
Okay, I understand, and we could put the stipulation, like I say, the key words would be in coordination with the HOA and Lowe's. If you couldn't, because you couldn't get the appropriate permits or people didn't agree, then the condition would fall off. So if we made a motion to connect the two in accordance with Lowe's and the HOA, and we could put a time limit on it. So if people couldn't agree, time expires and the condition drops off.
And would that be something that would be regulated and managed by the city planning staff? I think as long as there's a third party that would be all that way, that we can make sure that gives the residents protection that I'm moving fast and getting them information as well as they're getting me information too. So I think you'd have to have some sort of adjudicator.
Yeah, that would be the city staff, because again, everything's got to be to code. Answer the question: is it a public drive or a private drive? I understand that, but we could start the process with that motion and put some a time limit on it, say 60 days or something for the HOA, Lowe's, and I'm not sure Lowe's is involved, but Lowe's might say, you know what, we'd love to have the access further north instead of on the south end of the drive. But I think we can accommodate that, and I thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for your comments. Matthew, have you heard anything here in the conversation that creates a problem with the concept of a taking with regards to whether or not, if we didn't approve a special use permit, conditional use permit, etc., is there any cause and effect consequences by that action?
I'm not seeing any that I'd be concerned with. You're dealing with you're dealing with Quick Stop's property. So you wouldn't be taking their property if they voluntarily agree to that condition as an allowance. Beyond that, may I just want to give.
Speak up, please.
I will. Hold on. (9.3.3)(f) kind of gets back to your original question, whether or not they have a right to ask, which they do, and then when that happens, the Board of Adjustment has to consider it. And it says this: the Board of Adjustment shall review conditional use permit applications in a public meeting. That's what we're doing here. And thereafter vote to approve with conditions, or deny the application. So that's kind of, those are your basis of decision making today. And in making your decision, what you do is look through, as is represented on the memo from staff, is look at that 9.3.5 conditional review criteria. And that has some prefatory language that says the Board of Adjustment may approve an application for a conditional use where it reasonably determines that there will be no significant negative impact upon residents or other owners of surrounding property or upon the public. The Board of Adjustment shall consider the following criteria in its review, and approval shall be contingent upon compliance with the site plan and any conditions of approval. Then it goes down the laundry list of the effect on the environment, compatibility with the surrounding areas, external impacts minimized, infrastructure impacts minimized, and is it consistent with the general plan? Parcel size, and then site plan. So all of those are the things you're kind of taking into consideration when making your determination. You're weighing evidence as to whether or not it meets those things. And it also allows you some additional discretion under 9.3.6, which says the Board of Adjustment may impose additional reasonable conditions to carry out the spirit and intent of this code and to mitigate adverse effects on the proposed use. These requirements may include, but are not limited to, increased open space, loading and parking requirements, additional landscaping or buffering, and additional improvements such as curbing and sidewalks. And then kind of the big umbrella approach to these conditional use permits is contained in 9.3.1, which talks about the purpose of them, and then 9.3.2, which talks about the applicability. And 9.3.1, the purpose says conditional uses are uses that are generally compatible or can be made compatible with other uses in the underlying zoning district. Such uses may be permitted on a conditional basis under which additional requirements must be met, including determination of adequate land area and site plan approval by the planning agency because of their unusual characteristic or special characteristics of the area in which they are located. Conditional uses require special consideration so that they may be properly located with respect to the objectives of this code and their effect on surrounding properties. And 9.3.2 then goes to the applicability, that conditional uses may be complementary to those uses permitted by right in a zoning district, but require individual review of their location, design, configuration, and intensity, and may require the imposition of additional conditions in order to ensure the appropriateness of compatibility of the use of that particular location. In regards to this roadway in the back, I don't know if you have enough information at this time to consider it and whether or not you want maybe city engineering to take a look at it as well. It does appear it's something you can at least consider under that subsection 9.3.5 compatibility with the surrounding area, where it talks about the proposed site plan, circulation plan, and schematic architectural design shall be harmonious with the character of the surrounding area with respect to landscaping, scale, lot coverage, and the like, and some additional things like subsection D that talks about the infrastructure impacts being minimized and the negative impacts on existing uses in the area and in the city through the impacts on public infrastructure such as roads, parking facilities, et cetera. So I just wanted to kind of give you the kind of the large scale approach to these things, what they are and what your decisions can be in terms of moving what's been presented and tying it to the site plan, moving it with additional conditions, or denying the application. So I hope that helps.
It helps. I'm not here to tell these guys what to propose. I'm here to hear what they've got proposed and see if it's conducive to the neighborhood they're proposing it in, if it creates a public health and safety issue, et cetera. So that was from my questioning.
And I don't know if Mr. Worley has any additional thoughts on a potential roadway going through the back of the property, other than probably Ian Mattingly, the city traffic engineer, would at least want to maybe take a look at it.
Just want to point out, it's not my fault. He asked me to talk. As far as a roadway goes, I doubt it would be a public street. It could be a dedicated driveway connecting Prescott Canyon Drive to Holiday Drive. I don't believe we would want a dedicated public street that the citizens of Prescott are now responsible for maintaining. If it's a dedicated driveway just for Prescott Canyon Estates, that's a different story. I do think there may be a little bit of an issue with proximity and how that roadway could connect, that driveway could connect to the existing stub of Holiday Drive. And there may be a necessity for a connection between this site and whatever that roadway is in order to allow for both to connect to Holiday Drive within that public right-of-way segment. I also think that may be a possibility that it could be negotiated to do. I think the idea that there's a negotiation period imposed as part of a condition is certainly reasonable.
Thank you, George. That's part of my concern a little bit. I think there's some room for discussion between the applicant and the homeowners and the community as a whole. I think that this is far from ready to vote on an action other than to delay it, postpone it, and come back when we have some more information addressing some of the traffic issues we were talking about. And, any way you cut it, every time something happens different, it impacts somebody. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. Sit here and pretend that there's not going to be traffic at a quick stop's kind of dumb. Okay?
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, what we need to be able to do is in clear conscience work with the people that we're impacting the most and see what makes them most satisfied, or at least partially satisfied.
We appreciate that. Obviously, my staff went out of its way to notice as many of the folks here as possible for this meeting so that they could come and speak. I do think it's important for the board to keep in mind that this stretch of roadway along State Route 69 through Prescott is the highest intensity commercial zoning that we have. We did it intentionally because of the volume of traffic that comes through here. Something of high impact is going to happen on this property, whether this gets approved or not. This allows for conditions to be placed. Other types of uses could come in that are permitted by right that would not go through this process and simply happen. So one of the things that I think needs to be taken into consideration in any discussion between Quick Trip and Prescott Canyon Estates is that this is an opportunity, but it may not, it may be the only opportunity. That if this one doesn't work, there could be other uses that come through that are more impactful. So I think working out a good arrangement now is the best opportunity for both parties.
Thank you for that comment, George. I appreciate it, and we're working at it. I see an arm over here someplace. Thank you very much. Comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Tom Davis. I think George pointed out a really good point because I was going through the Land Development Code before the meeting in my preparation, and it's the permitted uses and the business general zone are pretty broad and intense. I mean, we're talking about hospitals and lumber yards, and these are permitted uses that would not go through the Board of Adjustment on a conditional use permit basis. So there is an opportunity here to maybe some compromise that works, and I support the east-west connection between the two roads, and I also support the fact that any modification to the site plan really should come back to the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you for your comments. Going up this side, any comments from the board?
I'm going to just, before you take additional action, just a note for staff is if we're considering this at some point possibly being a future city road, we need some sort of additional legal action like a dedication or an acceptance of a public right of way. And we got to see if that's something the city actually wants. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mark Oakness here. Time is probably important for all parties as far as construction and getting decisions. I wondered if my colleagues would be supportive of a motion that something along the lines of all involved parties, including the city, will seek to modify the site plan to provide east-west access on the north end of the property within 60 days. Failure to arrive at a conclusion requires a return to the Board of Adjustment. But with approval, so if the parties get together next week and say, yeah, we can do X, Y, and Z, and they're happy, being the HOA, the city, and the landowner and Quick Trip, then they don't have to come back to us. I saw George nodding that might be an appropriate way to handle it.
Yes.
Or the other option is we adjourn and come back after they've talked.
From a staff perspective and having dealt with a number of conditional uses over the years that are similar to this where a negotiation of some kind is appropriate, where a negotiation is appropriate between parties, it is traditionally has been better to defer action rather than leave a condition that a negotiation has to happen and then there's no one who's actually tracking it other than staff, and then we get blamed if it doesn't work. It would be better to defer action and have it come back to you on a date certain.
Okay, that's great, Mr. Chair. I thank you for that. So staff is recommending that the parties return to the Board of Adjustment, say in 60 days, in 2 months, and we'll defer action at this time.
Are you making that in the way of a motion?
It's, I guess, a discussion point, and if I'm getting a thumbs up, that's the way to proceed. Yeah, I'll make that motion formally.
Yeah. I'm one step ahead of you, so I looked up the calendar. So the scheduled April Board of Adjustment date would be April 18th, just so you're aware.
Excuse me, why couldn't we do it sooner? Why could we not continue this to the next meeting?
It's up to you if you feel like it's feasible that the applicant, the landowner, the HOA can, communicate between that time and come up with a solution. So, I don't know, 60 was just a little more reasonable, but it is up to you.
Well, I have one question. I know time's of essence to everybody here, but the landowner, 30 days okay? Is the developer, the business, 30 days okay? And the homeowners?
And
Yeah, I
one
understand that, and everybody wants to get this resolved, so at least everybody can get something out of this. I don't want anybody to feel like they've been short-sighted. So if you can do it in 30 days, it would help everybody. It would create a lot less tension and everything, I think.
I want to clarify that we have strict public noticing requirements. So essentially, we'd have to have all the information staff would next week to get into the mailings and to get into the paper and to post.
What would be the
We have to
minimum
do that
time
for you
for
guys,
you all?
'cause we-
Then? What would be the minimum time that you all suggest?
I would say like the April Board of Adjustment.
There is a way to do this. We have an item on an agenda, and we've advertised for this proposal. This can be brought back to you, and if, as part of that process, agreement has been reached between Quick Trip and the Prescott Canyon Estates Association, then you can impose that condition as part of your approval. What we would re-advertise is exactly what you have on today. And we have to do that because it takes us 20 days to advertise a meeting. That's by state law and interaction with local newspaper. We can't advertise later than that. So Kaylee's absolutely right. We're going to have to re-advertise your meeting next month in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks. So when we do that, we can't advertise exactly this. And we already have all of the information. It can be re-advertised exactly like this. If the parties come to you at that meeting and say, we've reached an agreement, you can make that a condition of your approval. So we can do it in 30 days.
Okay.
With that information, Mr. Chair, Mark Hookness here. I move that CUP 23-006 be deferred until our next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say aye.
Will you
And we're
will you
going to
state
defer it
the
until our next meeting.
March 21st? Nice birthday treat. I mean, I don't mind, except I'll take it 30 days.
Kaylee, do you have anything else that you'd like to bring up today?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, not hearing anything new from the city. This meeting's adjourned.